Hi, this is Josh from Dollar Store Reviewer, and today we are looking at the Final Faction line of action figures. These are a Dollar Tree exclusive. They're $1.25 each, and as you can see, they come in a lot of varieties. This is just a sampling of some of the different action figures and weapons packs and things like that that you can get for both the heroes and with the villains. And I'm joined here by Megan and Abby, and they're going to help us talk just a little bit about what you see here. So, Megan, let me start with you. You picked out some of these. Can you maybe talk a little bit about your observations with regard to the toys themselves and how they operate, how they move, how they feel? Just walk us through that a little bit. Maybe starting with the heroes first.
So with the heroes, I will say when it comes to the details in the suits and the armor, I'm pretty surprised. It's actually not the it's not the cheap dollar store action figures that I feel like people are used to seeing. Um, I will say there are some little flukes. The hood on this one, it doesn't stay on.
Show me a little
So
bit. If you can maybe hold that up and turn it around this way and maybe show on.
if you were to just tilt it back, it starts to come off, and if you were to play with it, it will eventually
Okay.
fall off.
So things don't stay on quite as well as you'd like them to. Again.
No, I feel like these would be better if you're someone who collects them to display.
Okay. So
As
So as a display, if you're a collector and you like to display things, it's got that going for them. But there are some limitations if you're going to be actually like kids doing actual action scenes with them.
And one of the biggest things, two of the characters that I have, this one on the end and this one here, have holders for their guns. And this one, the guns stay in okay, but none of them have backs to the holders. So when you slide the gun in, it's not going to stay. And so when I stand him up, if I were to put the gun in, that's not going to stay, even
Yeah.
if you are just going to display it.
Yeah, and it's cool to have a holster, but it's also a little bit disappointing that you don't necessarily have a way for it to stay put when you're playing with them.
That they couldn't just put a back into one of the.
Talk a bit about maybe the action. We got one of the packs that comes with the heroes. Can you talk just a little bit about what you saw there?
This one was the largest, and I will say when it comes to the variety of different weapons and items, it's pretty diverse. There are swords. There's a grappling hook. Um, there's they say this is a drone. This is like the best way I can describe it is a hoverboard. But I do like that there was thought put into them, and on the back of the packaging for that, it gives you the name of each of the items and it tells you what they do, and so the detail on that, the fact that someone came up with those is really
Okay.
I thought that's definitely something to be appreciated.
Yes, and yeah, they do. I found that interesting. We haven't talked about it yet, but it does deserve some special mention that each of the characters they come in your typical clamshell packaging, and you can see where we kind of took it out there. But on the back, they all have like these like RPG style ratings on them for strength, speed, agility, stamina, and durability. There's like an origin story, so there is a little bit of thought that went into the backstory of these characters. And it's also worth noting, too, now that there actually is an animated cartoon series that's on YouTube that Dollar Tree actually put up. We watched some of them. They're kind of corny and hammy, but it is interesting
The
that.
graphics are like your 2017 earlier video game graphic kind of.
Yeah,
Look.
they're definitely not like it's not like cutting edge like Disney CG or anything like that.
No.
But considering that literally this is a Dollar Tree exclusive, I think that's kind of interesting. Abby, you picked out, you're a fan of animals, and you picked out Churro. Can you talk maybe just a little bit about that particular doll, that particular action figure, and what you liked about him? He's a little bit different than I think any of the other characters.
Yeah, for starters, this opens up and you can just put him in there. He fits pretty well when you just put him in like this, but then this doesn't close. So you kind of have to jam him in upside down.
Okay, so once you stick him
And
in
taking
upside
it out,
down.
you just shake it. So
Okay.
and grab it. It's harder.
So there is like a little separate dog, and you can maybe hold that up a little bit to see. It's just a little.
It doesn't have a lot of details.
Okay.
The paint, just the eyes and the nose.
And it goes in,
This
and
has
it's
more details.
and it's part of that. What about the villains? Abby, your initial thoughts on the villains as you were looking at those? What did you make of them?
Pretty typical.
Okay, so they're kind of like your generic bad guys, right?
Generic Star Trek aliens.
Generic Star Trek aliens. I can kind of see that. Megan, what did you think as you were looking at the villains?
They are kind of your generic bad guys. I feel like when you think of bad guys, you kind of think of alien, like evil space aliens. But the detail on the different characters is actually pretty good. With the paint and the different textures that they used for each of them.
You had some trouble, I believe, was it with the middle one there? Is that the brute or the synth? The brute.
That's the synth.
The synthoid, and you had trouble with the arm staying on. Is that right?
Yeah, it's advertised that there is this is not one that we got, but there is a synthoid weapons pack, and the synthoid in the middle has detachable arms that they come off easy, and that's both a pro and a con, because that would not be something that you would have a fun time with actually using them.
Okay.
But yeah, it's other than that one's fine.
And these also have the same sort of collectible cards that you saw with the heroes as well, with again those sort of like role-playing statistics that you see in them in backstories. And they're also, of course, featured in the cartoons. Before we move away from the villains, I do have to mention, Megan, you're the one that spotted this.
This one.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
In one of the most hilarious things I've seen in a long time, one of the weapons has the Greenbrier. That's the company that's Dollar Tree. It's actually got the Greenbrier inscription written on the gun.
Not discreetly.
No, it's not discreetly. Like this, it's hard to miss. It's literally on the top of the gun. Maybe one other thing I think that I wanted to talk about with these toys, because I think that'd be important. We've talked about some of the pros and the cons with regard to things staying on. Abby, with regard to Churro, how would you say in terms of movement for the arms and I said just the legs in this case?
Yeah. The head on the mechanic thing turns. He doesn't have any articulation at all. He's just a dog, and that opens. Legs just move back and forth. Nothing special.
Okay, so just kind of moves back and forth.
The tail doesn't move a lot. Well, it does turn, but not a lot.
Okay. And Megan, what about on the action figures for the heroes and villains? Can you talk just a little bit about articulation?
Arms move up and down, legs move up and down, so they could sit, and then the head moves from side to side. With this one, this is shift. Her head can't turn all the way with her swords.
Okay.
In the back.
She wants her head
But
to
the rest
cut
of them
off.
do turn.
Sure.
So, and I will say this is the only female character, and I think there was only one of her hidden in a box.
Okay, so you
at
had trouble.
Dollar Tree. So it was not. She almost strikes me as one that's harder to find.
The monsters could be girls. You never know.
That is always possible. And with articulation with the villains?
Same thing.
So the arms and legs. And
Arms, legs, head.
is the Synthoid the only one that's got removable arms and legs?
That's what it looks like, yeah.
Okay. Do the guns, when you put them in the hands, it seems like they stay on okay.
Those guns stay on fine. The blue one on this side, that one snapped in fine, and it stays on. This one, we had to
kind of play with it, but it
push
does
a
seem to
little bit,
snap.
but it stays in, yeah.
And I noticed that the guns and the swords on the heroes, they went on okay.
Yeah, one thing I do like is that all of them have little holes in their backs, and a lot of the weapons have pegs.
Right.
They have pegs that you can put them into their back.
Okay.
To carry different things.
Yes.
None of the weapons really stay. That's the hood.
Yeah, that's the hood.
None of the weapons, they can't really hold any of the weapons too well, but that's one thing. Also, another thing I noticed, I haven't watched the cartoons much, but the head does turn on this one, and he has like an alien head on the back. I don't know if that's something that they mention in the TV series, but
we watched the entirety of the first episode,
They
and
mentioned that.
They
I don't
never
remember.
talked
No,
about
so maybe
that.
that's part of the plot, and yeah, there actually is a little bit of a plot that comes out in later episodes.
So that's one thing that maybe we would have to look into more.
Two observations I had about them. One is that they do stand up, and that doesn't sound like a big deal, but as somebody who grew up as a kid playing with sometimes really cheap toys, you'd stand them up and they would fall down. So these actually literally do stand up on their own. I don't know that that's too hard, and they're reasonably solid. I don't know. I mean, they're not.
This one is the only one that's hollow, obviously, for him to fit in.
Yeah, but they are, they're mostly solid. Like, I mean, I don't know that I would throw them across a room, but they feel maybe a little bit more substantial than I would expect, dollar store products to feel. So in that sense, they're not bad. I don't know that this is like on par with like G.I. Joe or anything like that, but I do think that these are maybe a little bit more interesting than I would have expected to find in a random dollar store, and specifically Dollar Tree, where everything at the time of this video is $1.25. So these are interesting. I don't know. If you were, let me ask you one last question. Megan, do you think these are worth the money that they cost?
I would say yeah. I think for me, being a Star Wars and Marvel fan, I can appreciate them. So I think it definitely has to appeal to a certain audience, but I would say that if you are a fan of like sci-fi space, kind of things, then yeah, I would say it would probably be worth it. And I think if you were a kid who likes those different genres, then I think it would be something to look into for those.
And Abby, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I had something of note about the armor, actually.
Go ahead.
Only one of the sets comes with anything that can go on the dog. So right now, the dog is just the dog, and you can't put anything on it unless you get the other set. Only that set doesn't come with as much, so...
Yeah, and that is actually one of the little traps of this particular line, is that to actually get everything you want, you can actually spend more than you might think. It's not that difficult to end up spending $15 or $20. Now, granted, you're going to get a fair amount of stuff for your trouble, but if you think this is a set that you're only going to spend a couple bucks on, it can easily kind of draw you into getting more stuff, because you may want some of these accessory packs. They're going to add some functionality to some of the toys, like she mentioned with the dog.
The villain's weapon pack that we got only came with the 3 guns in the front, whereas this came with all of the different.
Yes, and it was there was more than one hero pack weapon pack.
We saw 3 hero weapon packs and 3 villain ones.
Right.
I don't know if that's it or
Right.
if there are more.
Yes. Well, and I wonder too, the other element, and this is probably a good thing to close on, is that there is, I notice in the packaging, it talks about multiple series, that there may be yet more to this series that we don't know about. And so I don't know, this may be a line that Dollar Tree is looking to sell in the long term. We'll see.
You might soon get a kitten that can turn into a lion robot.
I having seen the cartoons, I would tell you I wouldn't rule anything out. So this is an interesting set, and hopefully we've given you a little bit of background. Again, these are a Dollar Tree exclusive, these Final Faction action figures and accessories, and you can find them in the Dollar Tree toy section.